Hey everyone who's joining, thank you so much. So, today I'm going to be talking about 10 things to ask yourself. Hold on, I'm just going live on Instagram. Okay, great. So, I'm going to be talking about 10 questions to ask yourself at the end of 2023. So, December typically is my absolute favorite time of the year. I love reflecting, I love setting intentions, but something that I see a lot is people just want to go full steam ahead and set all of their intentions for the next year, but they don't actually look back. So they're not actually asking themselves what happened, what were the good things, the bad things, and really why you should be doing this. So, why you should be reflecting is you need to start to understand pattern recognition. So, looking at the patterns that are happening over and over and over again, and then self awareness is the first key, but then that should really be guiding what you're doing the next year. So that should be guiding the action that you take. So, for those of you that don't know me or that are new here, or even that are watching this as a replay, I'm Hannah Kissel and I'm a life coach. I work with high performers. I help them create meaningful careers, healthy relationships, and really, most importantly, I help them work on their relationships with themselves. So we do that through boundaries, self compassion. And before that, I worked in tech. I worked at LinkedIn for over 7 years in sales. And something that we would always do in sales is a post-mortem. So that was looking at if there was a big deal that was closed or even a big deal that wasn't closed that fell through. We needed to understand with my team and when I was an individual contributor as well, what happened? What were the good things that happened? What were the bad things that happened? What did we miss? And essentially, this is a post-mortem of your year. So what I'm going to do today is go through the 10 questions to ask yourself. I'm also going to be answering the questions myself and give you guys a little behind the scenes and a peek of what my year has looked like. I know some of my clients are joining, my one on one clients. Some of my clients will know this stuff, some of my clients won't. And so this will just be, yeah, it will just be a little behind the scenes. But the way I recommend doing this, so after this is done, I'm also going to be sending out the 10 questions and some resources to help you if you're stuck on anything. And I actually recommend doing this in a few different sessions. So, first, sitting down, quiet place. Don't take your phone with you or put your phone away, someplace where you can be quite reflective. And then I would answer the questions. Then, a few days later, actually go through, reread them, and then I'm going to be giving you guys intention setting questions for 2024. But I think that when you actually leave the reflection questions for 2023 to marinate for a little bit, and then you create some space, and then you can read them, then you set your intentions for 2024, because you're really only able to look back and reflect once you get some space. But if you do it all at once, typically what I've noticed is the action isn't necessarily as strong, the awareness isn't typically there. So I do recommend doing it over 2 sessions. Okay, so the first question number one is, how are you feeling about 2023 and why? And so for me, how am I feeling? 2023, it was a big fucking year for me. I finished my master's degree in creative writing. I was published for the first time. I went full time in my business. I moved in with my partner. And so I feel like it was a really intense year. It was a really big year of growth. I feel really proud of how I showed up. But I also experienced a lot of mental struggle. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, there definitely was some mental struggle, and it was interesting watching my reaction to that and really observing it, and then looking at the steps that I took to overcome it. But I would say, how am I feeling about 2023? I feel like it was a great year. I feel like it was a really big year of growth. It was a year of me stepping into what I know I'm meant to become. And then also, I think it's interesting, like watching when my clients are almost going through a similar journey as I am, or maybe even experiencing something a year behind when I experienced it. And that has also been really cool as well, because I often see that what my clients go through is a reflection of what I had been through. So That's just another little point. So, what question number two? What is a word that summarizes 2023 and why? And my word of the year, when I was setting my intentions for 2023, I wanted my word to be expansion, but I think that the real word of the year was humility. And there were so many things that I realized I didn't know how to do, and a lot of it was in my fiction writing. So, as some of you know, I've been working on a novel for uh, about 3 years now, and I'm currently just on my third. I'm on my third draft of it, and I thought I knew how to write a novel, and then when I read the second draft, I realized, wow, I actually don't know how to write a novel at all. And this is just a collection of scenes. This isn't actually a coherent story. So it was very humbling in that sense of, okay, really having to do the groundwork. And then in my business as well, I think um I worked in corporate for so many years, learning how to run my own business, not necessarily on the coaching side. I've never struggled coaching my clients, and I've actually been very fortunate that since I've launched my business, it's pretty much always been full with my one-to-one clients. And I'm just became at capacity yesterday, and I only had a spot open for 7 days. So that's been quite amazing. But the actual day-to-day of learning how to run a business, learning how to scale a business, growing a business, that's been extremely humbling. And I've actually had to get a lot of help with that this year in terms of business coaches and looking at what I invested in. So the word that summarizes 2023 for me is humbling. And question number three, what are you most proud of this year? And on a similar theme, I think that going full time in my business, I'm very proud of that. I wasn't able to do that while I was studying full time. So now I am full time in my business. Being published for the first time, that was huge. One of my short stories was published in a writer's anthology, and I've been working toward that for a few years, submitting a lot of short stories, getting a lot of rejections, and just trying to hone my craft on my fiction writing. And I think that is like really not giving up on that, realizing, and I had to do a lot of mindset work too. Like I reread Mindset by Carol Dweck. Previously, I have had a very fixed mindset where I've really thought that talent was innate. And when I started my master's, I realized that I wasn't a prodigy in writing, and that was pretty earth shattering because I previously thought I was, and there were people that were a lot better than me. I was getting work ripped apart by my professors, and that was very good for me. But I am most proud this year that I have kept going and that I didn't just give up on my craft when it was hard. Similar for my business, there were points where it has been really hard this year, especially because I'm operating alone. I run, it's just me and my business. I will be hiring someone else next year, but for right now, it has just been me. So it's been a bit lonely, but sticking through it, getting the right support is something that I feel very proud of. So number four, what were your biggest hardships? And again, I think that while you guys are doing this, I mean, I know that I'm walking through, but like I said at the beginning, what you're really looking for is pattern recognition. So see what comes up over and over again. A lot of my answers are similar, so I know what vein to actually focus on for 2024. But this should actually give you a hint of what you do need to work on, so you can take action. Like first, it's the awareness, then it's action. So for me, what were my biggest hardships? I think finishing my master's degree was amazing, but then I did go into a bit of a hole after, a bit of a spiral. And I think that um, that had to do with a few different things. I think it was not having the structure of school behind me. It was really my last semester at school was a huge amount of work. It was probably the most work intensive semester that I had endured at uni before. So then that all of a sudden just being done, and then it was just me alone in my business, without professors around me, without classmates around me. And I think that I really slid into almost a bit of a depression around it. And so that that was very difficult. And at that time as well, I'd been working with a trauma therapist for 5 years. and she was absolutely amazing. But when I went to her, I had PTSD and complex PTSD from some childhood history. And I had decided at that point that I was done with therapy. It had been, it had been a great process. I'd healed a lot, but I wanted to see what my life was like without support. And I tried that for a few months. And that definitely, and I realized quite quickly that actually that wasn't the right move for me, that I needed support. So I'm going to come to that a little bit later, in my further questions. But yeah, it was the recognition that actually I do need to ask for help. And I think sometimes, especially because I'm in this profession as well, because I coach, because I am a life coach, what I realize is that you know, I give a lot to my clients. I'm the safe place for them to land. I'm their support structure. But I think it's super important, especially if you are in, a compassionate career, that you also have the support. And so I realized that now it has become my non-negotiable. I do have to have therapy. A lot of it as well as supervision. If I need to bring some things up for, that happens in a client session. This doesn't happen very often, but sometimes there'll be something that I need to discuss with someone that I need to get guidance on. Obviously, all of my client sessions are confidential. It's very similar to a therapeutic relationship. So I can't necessarily ask anyone that isn't confidential to me. So a therapist is the right person, or a supervisor. Um, so yeah, that was really my biggest hardship. I think nothing kind of externally terrible happened. Fortunately, there was no experience with family or friends, but it was a lot of mental hardship, which can take as big of a toll. Okay, number 5. What were your non-negotiables and did you follow through with them? Why or why not? So, non-negotiables are something that I work with my clients on. And basically, the concept is what are the things that you need, that what's the baseline action that you need in certain areas to keep you healthy? So, typically the areas that I look at are sleep, exercise, food, meditation, and for me, creativity. Some of my clients that works for not. So for example, for me, I need to exercise 3 to 4 times a week. I need to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. I meditate twice a day. I do transcendental meditation, so 20 minutes twice a day. And then for creativity, I write 4 times a week. And I'm also in 12-step recovery. So I do three 12-step meetings a week. So I would say that, for me, I did follow through. I was pretty strong on exercising, definitely strong on sleep. That's something that I have really ramped up. Since I moved in with my partner, he's got air conditioning, and I didn't have air conditioning before, and I think that's really improved my sleep. And we also have an 8, it's called like 8 mattress, and it's basically a mattress cover, and it's a heating and cooling system, and you could adjust it on either side, because he runs really hot and I run pretty cold. But that as well as really, I used to sleep only 6 hours a night, and now I sleep 7 to 8.5, and it's really changed my life. So it's amazing. But I did follow through. I mostly followed through. I would say creativity, that's probably the one that sometimes does slip in terms of my writing. I couldn't really write while I was in school and running my business. It was just, I was not working on my novel. I was just working on assignments. So that definitely took a back seat. And then sometimes my second meditation does slip, but pretty much I would say I'm typically pretty strong on my non-negotiables. But this is a really good thing to look at for next year. So if you feel like you don't necessarily have your basic needs met. So if you're not sleeping, 7 to 8 hours a night, if you're only sleeping 5 to 6, that's what I see a lot. If you're not regularly eating, I really see that a lot as well. So especially with people with children, or even people with really hectic jobs without children, I find that they will skip meals. That can also contribute to burnout. So are you drinking enough water? So really what I start to look at with clients when they come to me, especially if they're in very high stress environments, which a lot of them are, what are you actually just covering your basic needs? So I would assess that, in terms of exercise, sleep, healthy food, water. And then I really do encourage meditation as well. So, do you have a meditation practice, even if it's once a week on the Calm app or on Headspace? What does that look like? Okay, so number 6, make a list of everything you achieved this year. How does that list make you feel? I feel like I've pretty much said, everything that I've achieved, a lot that I've achieved this year. So I won't necessarily go into that. But the really important thing is, how does this make you feel? So access that feeling. And sometimes what I see is people can just be like, "Oh, I feel great. I feel proud." But actually sit with it. How does it feel in your body as well? So try to strengthen that mind body connection. And then sometimes, it might make you feel great. It might make you feel proud, but sometimes you might say, I wish I had achieved more. Sometimes you might say, I still feel inadequate. And those are really good experience. Those are really good emotions to explore. So actually sitting down with that question, getting in touch with your emotions. I think for me, how do my achievements make me feel? Um, yeah, I do feel pride. I feel like I've done a lot of very hard, challenging things this year. And one of my values is grit. And I've pushed through a lot of mental hurdles. I've also got the right support structures in place now, which has helped me tremendously. And so I feel like pride. And then I just feel like also a total acceleration of things in my life. And that's really just happened in the past 2 months. So that's quite amazing. Okay, number 7. How satisfied are you in the following areas? Give a rating from 1 to 10 and why. So I like to look at 3 areas. These are the 3 areas that I coach with my clients on. So one is meaningful and purpose-filled career. 2 is relationships, and those can be relationships with family, romantic partnerships, as well as friendships. And then 3, and this is really the most important, is your relationship with yourself, because your relationship with yourself really dictates all of these other areas. It dictates how you show up. So that is really the bulk of my work with one-on-one clients, is what is their relationship like with their self themselves, and then everything comes from that. So for me, rating from 1 to 10, meaningful and purpose-filled career. Um, I would say my career, I give it a 9. I've I was in a client session yesterday, and one of my clients, we've been talking, we've probably only been working together for 4 or 5 months. And I think she's actually on this session. I feel like I'm almost gonna cry. And her life has just completely transformed. When she came to me, she, just said she had so many people pleasing boundaries, or people pleasing issues, she had poor boundaries, she didn't feel empowered. And she just said, I want to feel empowered, I want to feel in control of my life. And I've just watched her completely change her whole life. And when you have the right support structures in place, when you have the right people supporting you, I've witnessed it in my clients and I've witnessed it in myself, your acceleration is 10 times faster. And so I really look at what I do, and I think like I am, my whole business is transformation. Like that is what I do. And I like to work with a specific set of people. I typically like to work with very ambitious people, very driven people, but typically, not always, but the people that I work with, typically that comes with poor boundaries. Typically that comes with, not a very strong sense of self, diminished self-esteem. Your relationship with yourself could be a bit toxic. There could be some self-loathing in there. And so then what we do is we really reshape their lives. So I would say, yeah, I really believe that, I think that I am living out part of my purpose. I think that, I have I have some pretty high ambitions of what I want to do in the future. And um yeah, a lot of that is actually around childhood sexual abuse. I'm really passionate about that. I see my career going into more advocacy for that, but I think that this is the start of it. That's not what I work with clients on, by the way. And if that has happened to you, I definitely recommend go see a therapist. Do not see a coach for that. But I see myself in advocacy. I see my fiction writing becoming more and more prominent in my life. I only see my coaching career getting bigger. But yeah, I am so grateful that I get to do this for a living. I think it's absolutely astounding. And it really fills myself with it. I feel a lot of pride when I see my clients completely change, which all of them do. So that's really great. Second thing, relationship. So give a rating on 1 to 10. I would say my romantic relationship, I give that uh, probably like an 8.5 or a 9. I think my partner would say the same. We've got a really healthy, lovely, beautiful relationship. He's like one of my greatest gifts. And I won't share too much because he's quite, he's a private person, but we do have some things that we're working on, as any couple does. And so, but we're working on that together. We really approach these like a team. And I think the relationship that I've attracted and maintained is really a reflection of the work that I've done. I did not have a healthy relationship history. I had a very toxic relationship history. And I really intentionally took steps, so many steps. I have done so much work in that area. And probably if I hadn't done that work, or I know if I hadn't done that work, then I wouldn't be able to be in the relationship that I am today. So that's also a huge source of pride for me. And that's just to say that, if one of these areas doesn't look good in your life, then you can 100% change it. It's always possible. And I know that in my life, I've seen that in other people's lives. I'm in women in 12-step recovery who I've sponsored. Like, transforming your life and changing your life is at any point possible if you do have the right support structures in place. So I will caveat it with that. It will be a lot easier with support rather than doing it on your own. And then number three, how is your relationship with yourself? I would say that's an 8. I would like that to be a 9 or a 10. I think it's very, the relationship with myself is really strong. I think that I have really high self-compassion. I do have very high standards for myself as well, though. And I think that, I have been able to hold myself through that. I've also been able to like be accepting of what is, and like understanding that, a lot of things do take hard work. I think that in my career at LinkedIn, I went to President's Club my first year. I've always been a very high performer, and my business is a reflection of that today. But there have been hurdles, of course, and so I think really holding myself through that has been one of the biggest things in my year, and really not having the safety net of corporate behind me and figuring out how to run my business, also showing up. I mean, that was really fucking painful for me at first, just like showing up consistently on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I've had to really, do that over and over again, and like hold myself in that and say, it's okay. There's no threat here. This is just me building a business. And now, of course, there's really no charge with that because I've done it so much. But in the beginning, earlier this year, at the beginning of 2023, a lot of that was difficult for me. Okay, number 8, we're on the home stretch here. What boundaries did you set or not set this year, and why? So I won't go into the specific boundaries that I've set, but I will say that I led a boundary workshop, a masterclass, and it was how to set boundaries without feeling like a bitch. And right before I led that workshop, um, there were like 4 or 5 boundaries that just came into my life that was really apparent that I had to be set. And it felt like it was the universe just saying, like, you're teaching this stuff, it's time for you to show up and set these boundaries. And that was really, yeah, sometimes this boundary work, I feel very strong in boundaries. I've been practicing it for a very long time. It's been a very intentional piece of my inner work. It's also a huge component of my coaching practice. So I do feel quite fluent in this. I feel really, yeah, sometimes it's easier than others. I was doing a volunteer position, and it was taking up a lot of my time, a lot of emotional bandwidth, and I had to stop doing that in order to focus on my business and to give me more energy. Stopping that was very challenging for me, and letting people down. And another thing about boundaries that I do like to preface is, like, you are going to let people down, because with the boundary, but what is really important here is that you are intact, that you're feeling whole, that you really understand what's right for you. And so if you don't necessarily know, like, sometimes people don't know that they need to set boundaries. And so a huge starting point for boundaries is, where do you feel resentment? So if you feel seething resentment in certain areas of your life, let's say it's at your partner, let's say it's at work, it could be in a friendship, it could be with a family member, that's a really good indication that a boundary is being crossed. And then from there, you can evaluate it. So look, I mean, for that volunteer position, I was starting to get really resentful because it was so many hours of my time. It was also very emotionally taxing for me. And I didn't have the emotional output. But so I realized, okay, I'm starting to get resentful. There's a boundary that needs to be set here. And I did have to do that and give up that position. But I definitely know it was the right thing for me. And I did disappoint people. And one of my clients in a session yesterday, we talked about how 2024 is going to be the year of disappointing people. And just being okay with that and being okay with, really holding yourself through that. And I think the next question is around self-compassion, but that's where self-compassion comes in. So when you disappoint people, when you set a boundary, when people say, I don't actually like this doesn't feel good, you're changing the dynamic, that's when you really have to lean into holding yourself and saying, no, that's okay. I'm here for you. I know that some people don't like this. It doesn't necessarily matter. This is the right thing for us. And there's a concept that I call afterburn. So when you set a boundary, there's going to be shame, there's going to be guilt, and that's okay. And realizing that that's a normal part of the experience, you might think like, am I being selfish? But if you know that this is the right thing for you, if you feel like another sign that you need to set boundaries is that you're constantly exhausted. You're exhausted, you're depleted, you don't feel like you have that vitality in you anymore. These are all real indications that there's some that you're not necessarily going to thrive if you don't change things. So again, all of these things, like I keep saying it over and over again, but it's all about pattern recognition. When you're going into 2024, realizing what are the patterns that you don't want to be taking with you? What are the things that you can uproot? Moving on to number 9, how did you demonstrate self-compassion? So self-compassion is also a really big part of my coaching practice. And I would say the number one way that I demonstrated self-compassion is getting more help. So, like I said, after I finished my master's degree, I went into a bit of a funk, almost like a low grade depression, which I'd never experienced before. And I'd stopped with one therapist, and then I realized I need to start seeing another therapist. So I've been trained on internal family systems therapy. I've done some introduction trainings in that. I use it with my clients. It's absolutely transformational radical work. It's kind of like systems theory and it's parts work. So um all of us have all of these different parts. Like you have your harsh inner critic, you have your achiever part, sometimes you have your addict part, maybe that binges or that drinks too much or that smokes. And what parts work does and what internal family systems therapy does is that you actually speak to that part, you start to understand that part, you look at where it comes from. And and then once you look at it, once you give it the space to talk, and once you ask that part what it needs, then your whole system settles. Because if you understand where that part comes from, they're typically trying to protect you, even if they're doing very maladaptive behaviors. So I've been trained on that, or a bit of training on that. I've been using it on my clients. I want to do a certification in it next year. It's very difficult to get into a certification in Australia, which it's frustrating for me, but that's okay. And I knew I wanted to work with an IFS therapist. So I found an IFS therapist. That work has been quite radical, really unbelievable. It's very challenging though at times. A lot of, I think, working with any new coach or therapist, things do come up at the beginning. So I have found that challenging. I have needed a lot more rest. I've needed to drink a lot of water, get a lot of sleep. But it's been transformative. And then I also I work with business coaches, Steph and Tim Frey, and they're really amazing. I mean, their business coaching program successful, but I just realized that I actually need a bit more support around my business. I needed one-on-one support, really someone to look at, my thought patterns, my limiting beliefs. And so I started working with Brianna May, and she's been, phenomenal. So the way I look at my support structure is I've kind of got like my business coaches, and they're quite tactical on like how to operate. Then I've got Bree, she sits underneath that, and she's a combination of more like business and mindset. But then there are some things that will come up in the sessions with Bree that I then take with my therapist, and that's like very deep internal work. we're not looking at business strategy in my therapy sessions. That's not the appropriate place to do that. But just rounding this out, the biggest way I've demonstrated self-compassion is asking for help, is realizing that I can't do this on my own, and nor should I. I'm trying to do a really big thing here. I'm trying to achieve some really fucking huge, amazing things, and I don't need to do it on my own. I don't need to be a hero. It's funny, one of my clients said that to me the other day. I was interviewing her on another LinkedIn Live, and she said that she didn't need to be a hero, that she needed to be support. And I think, as well, as someone that gives a lot for their profession, it's really quite critical that I also receive a lot, that I go to places where I can be taken care of. Because if I don't do that, then I'm not showing up for my clients as well as I could be. So I have to really take care of my mental state so that I show up for sessions grounded. I show up for sessions almost as an empty vessel, ready to receive whatever is thrown at me. I can handle it. But that is contingent upon my mental state being very strong, very grounded. That's contingent upon me meditating twice a day, me doing my non-negotiables. Which I love. So, last question here, which actually isn't really a question, but it's write a letter of gratitude to 2023. So whether you think this has been, an amazing year for you, whether it's been a really hard year for you, I know I do work with a lot of people in tech and, in sales orgs, leading sales orgs, still in sales, and it has been a difficult year. Um, in a lot of ways, because a lot of my clients who are high performers are necessarily not hitting their quotas for the first time, not making their numbers, et cetera. And I've seen that, although I have watched clients navigate that quite easily, which has been really amazing to see. But writing a letter of gratitude for 2023, thanking it, what has it taught you? What do you need to say goodbye to? And really sitting there and allowing that to come through. And so that's the first part. So again, what I recommend, taking a day over the holidays, over the holiday break, doing this in one session, and then coming back to it a few days later, reading through it. You're really looking for those patterns. You're really looking for any type of, repeating structure that's happening, so that then you can go into 2024. So then for 2024, I'm going to go through some questions um, of then how to set intentions. So number one, what does a life beyond my wildest dreams look like next year? And for this, dream big. Like, think if you had zero constraints. So money didn't matter, certain situations didn't matter. What would you love to accomplish this next year? And I would say that with something like this, a lot of people, they think too small, and they see their own limitations. And so, for me, it's like, I really want a TED Talk. So it's like doing TED Talk. I would love for my book to be published. I would love for Netflix or HBO to buy the rights to my book. I'm launching group programs next year. I would love for those to be completely sold out. I would love to transform more lives. So just think about, what's the best possible scenario for next year. Number two, what needs to be executed to make this happen? And what's the smallest step that you can take? So I would bucket this in different areas. So again, like career, relationships to yourself, and think, okay, what do I need to do to make this happen? I know for me, like I said, I need support. So I need my coaches, I need my therapist. I also, need my partner as well. Like, I think having that solid home base really helps me dream big, really helps me take steps. So it's like, what's the smallest step I could take? Okay, what thing in each area? For me, it's like finishing the next draft of my book as well, which the smallest step there would be in my writing today. So starting to very break it down. One of my mentors and coach, Martha Beck, she calls these turtle steps. So you want to think, like, what is the tiniest little turtle step that you could take? Number three, what support structures do I need to make this happen? And so this one, I think probably the theme of this has been support. I also am a coach, so I obviously believe very much in support. So if you, let's say, I know for me, like, I want to get this book published. Okay, I probably need a structural editor. I already have my coaches in place, but what do I need in fiction? Can I get a mentor to help look at my writing, to help look at my short stories, things like that? What do you want out of 2024? So again, what are the lessons that you want to learn? What is it to, and think about like what you want to feel. Do you want to feel more joy? Do you want to feel freedom? Do you want to feel empowered? And getting really connected to what is it that you want 2024 to bring you? And then after this, why? Why do you want those things? So if it's having a healthier relationship in your life, maybe that's a romantic partnership. Why do you want a healthy relationship? What I mean, besides the obvious, but really like getting in touch with what is this going to do in your life and how will it make you feel? So it's really good to actually focus on the feeling and then start to think about, where do you already feel that emotion in other areas? Or where do you already feel that feeling in other areas? So for me, it's like, I want to be very successful in my fiction writing. I don't have a big background of being successful in fiction. I've got one short story published. I'm very much an emerging writer, but I do have a lot of success in career. So it's like anchoring into that feeling of, okay, I already feel like this in one area. So then I can just replicate that into another area. Next question. What word or phrase encapsulates my ideal year? So what did I say with me and Bree, my coach, we worked on this. I think it was like a emerging. I forgot. I forgot what it was, but it was something like, I felt like I was a phoenix, be like rising out of the ashes. And so yeah, for me, I think my word for the year is going to be emergence. It wasn't emergence. It was something like that. But just thinking about, okay, what's the feeling that you want? What's the word that you want? I love choosing a word for the year, even though I forgot it already. But that's fine. It'll come back to me. Okay, that next question is, what boundaries do I need to put in place? So again, this is where you go back to your reflections and you see, are there patterns that emerged? Where do you feel like, where have you felt resentment? Where have you felt exhaustion? If you feel a lot of resentment and exhaustion, this is an indication that you need to put boundaries in place. So understanding where it is, understanding what you can drop to make room. Because if you already feel like you have a very full plate, if you're already at capacity, yet you want to add more and do more, that's just, it likely won't work. So you need to then start dropping things away. What do you need to shed in order to grow? And then last question, how do I want to feel at the end of the year? And I think for me, how I want to feel, yeah, I want to feel pride. I want to feel empowered. And I also really want to feel loved, which I do feel very loved in my relationship, but I want to feel loved in my relationship. I want to continue to feel loved by myself. And I think for me, a lot of it, I have a lot of like hard, almost like masculine energy. I have a lot of yang energy. And so sometimes for me, a lot of it has been around softening, surrendering into things, going more slowly, being more gentle with myself. Uh, so I guess, an energy, I've had periods of sickness throughout my life. So energy is always a huge thing for me. I always want to feel like energetic, have a lot of vitality. So yeah, I guess next year, how I really want to feel at the end of next year is empowered, loved, and energetic. So these are all of the questions. Again, if you said you were attending this on LinkedIn, I'll actually send you a follow up with the recording as well as a document of all these questions. I would love to hear from you. Send me a DM or put a comment on there. Was this helpful? What do you want to see more of? And yeah, I highly, highly recommend doing this practice because it's taking some time out for you. It's actually signaling to your body that you're going to be intentional for next year, that you care, but that you care about yourself. And when you start to do that, the relationship with yourself strengthens. So if you've made it through this far, kudos to you. And that really shows me that you're taking action, you're caring for yourself, you're very purposeful, that you're driven, that you want to make your life better. And I absolutely love that. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Send me a DM if this was helpful. and or a DM with anything else. And yeah, I hope to hear from you. All right.